Casting a European eye on these issues is Dr. Hans Kluge, Regional Director for the for Europe at the World Health Organization. Doctor, thank you very much for joining me. Whether it's here in the U.S. or in Europe, from Germany to the U.K., as regions reopen, the numbers start spiking again. Do you think it's due primarily to human nature? As things reopen, people relax their guard, or is it just the nature of this virus? Is it just not possible to go back to any semblance of normalcy without incurring these spikes?
Right. In the WHO European region, indeed, we also see resurgences in many countries. And then the question often asked is it a first wave? Is it a second wave? That's secondary. The key issue is due to change in human behavior. And what we see in Europe is that particularly in the age cohort between 20 and 39 years now, people are infected. So the incidence is increasing, not necessarily the mortality yet. So we have to take advantage of this huge potential of young people to get them on board and to protect not only themselves, but also their seed.
Mm-hmm. You've placed a lot of emphasis on reaching that young cohort, but they seem immune to many of these messages. How do you actually go about doing that?
Right. I think the last thing we need to do is to finger point or to blame. And that's the same, for example, with the anti-vaccination movement we see in a number of countries. We have to get them on board and mobilize people who reach out to them, whether it is youth leaders, youth ambassadors, and take advantage of what we try to do as a WHO globally of behavioral and cultural insights which have worked in the past, speaking about, for example, vaccination.
Mm-hmm. Now, unfortunately, politics and the pandemic go hand in hand. Earlier this month, with the U.S. notifying the WHO that it intends to leave, how has the Trump administration's adversarial relationship with the WHO affected the fight against the coronavirus?
Well, what I can tell is that the United States of America has been for many, many years a very strong partner of the World Health Organization. I sincerely hope this will continue. I have been working in some of the most challenging places on earth, and what I saw is that with the help of the American people, so many vulnerable people, whether people with multi-drug resistant tuberculosis or refugees, have been saved, and I would like to thank the American people for that.
But without that support, what now?
Well, we hope that we will continue the partnership, because it's not only about financing, it's about collaboration with the United Center of Disease Control and many, many other partners. So at this stage, we focus on saving lives. We are in the midst of the pandemic. We see resurgence, so all hands on deck to save the lives and prevent more damage to the people.
And more evidence suggests it'll be a long battle. As you know, the Director General of the WHO just recently said the effects of the coronavirus will be felt for decades. What exactly did he mean, and do you agree with that?
Right, it's true. Coming back to the point of the resurgence, the virus is still there. If we see a decrease in cases in a number of countries, it's not because the virus disappeared, it was the effect of lockdowns or lockdown light. So naturally, when you lift it, it will increase again. So we will have to learn to live with the virus for quite a while, as our WHO Director General is saying. Mental health also is an area of concern. Chronic diseases, there has been a rupture in routine immunization services, breast cancer screening. So that's what we try to have to accelerate. We call it a dual track health system response. Focus on the COVID, but as much as is needed, and it is needed, on all the other pandemics. For example, the HIV/AIDS, which is another very big pandemic which we shouldn't forget about.
If we do have to live with it for a long time, as you say, one of the key issues here is schools. Many cities and states here in the U.S. are in the throes of heated debates about reopening schools, but the science seems at times contradictory, and the examples from Europe from reopening schools seems conflicting. So what's your guidance as to the question of what conditions make it safe to reopen schools and how best to do it successfully?
Right. This science is itinerary, so it's evolving. So I understand that people sometimes would like to see, right, the one size fits all I'm very well aware of the recent reports in the last 48 hours in different parts of the world that children, also of all ages, are susceptible to the coronavirus. They're part of the transmission cycle. So in that sense, I would like to refer to positive examples that in several European countries, schools have been reopened gradually and safely. Why? Because the attention went to pushing back the community transmission, because schools are not a stand-alone entity in the society. The public health measures have to be put in place, and we have to be very well aware of the adverse effects of leaving out children and younger people out of the schools, particularly those with special needs. In Europe, the 31st of August, I will co-chair a European conference with the Minister of Health of Italy, Dr. Speranza, on safely reopening the schools. But again, also in the United States, you have so many good experts, and we're also all around the world learning from each other.
Hopefully people will actually listen to the experts. We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Hans Kluge of the World Health Organization. We appreciate it.
Thank you.